Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Behind the Worlds. Today, I'm really excited to have Shubha, someone I've known for the past year or so. Shubha has an exciting, super exciting background, having worked at companies like Pixar. Shubha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
For sure, it's my pleasure. I guess my first question is, you've been a deep technical builder and a creative leader at Pixar. There's so much that we can share about your background, but I would love to know from you, like, what's your story?
What's my story? Great question. So I kind of got started on this path, I think, like way back when I was a kid, where I feel like stories and worlds have always been my safe space. I was like very quiet, very introverted, felt very overwhelmed in social situations, but in books, in films, you could be anything and feel like you could be anything. So I just got so entranced by any form of art that can capture a world or bring you into another world. And that fascination kind of has continued since then. So I actually went to school for engineering, studied like electrical engineering, computer sciences at Berkeley. And part of the reason I joined was, yeah, my obsession with how technology can unlock dimensions of freedoms in storytelling
Okay.
and world building. So it was always this question in my mind of what would I apply my engineering skills towards? I kind of sampled a lot of different things. And one of the internships I did was at Disney Animation Studios, where at the time they were working on Frozen 2. And
Yeah.
it was just this incredible place where the most talented technologists and the most talented artists built side by side. And I almost started to view technology itself as an art when I was working there because in studios, they're building a lot of custom software to unlock new pipelines, new looks. And
Hmm.
that is a very cool creative process. It's
Yeah.
less about, solving a specific problem. It's more about what are the bounds of what we can do with what we know. And I just really fell in love with that process. And I
Yeah.
knew that was what I wanted to commit to and continue working towards. So as Amin mentioned, like after I graduated, I immediately joined Pixar, where I spent 3 years as a technical director. I went initially started on the film Turning Red, and
Yeah.
I was literally like photoshopping blown out pixels and putting shots into the film, and it was just like it was towards the tail end of production, very scrappy. And over the 3 years I was there, I ended up working on a number of films. So I worked on Turning Red, Lightyear, Elemental, Elio, and Hoppers.
Yeah.
And I also moved into a role as a lead technical director. My title was sequence lead, so I would take care of a chunk of the film, 1/8 of the film, and kind of oversee it and take the sequence from the very beginning stages of the animation pipeline all the way till the end. And so, yeah, did that for 3 years and kind of saw how the sausage is made with Pixar films, which
Yeah.
was really inspiring. And it really cemented this feeling of technology in and of itself is an art form. And this is a phrase I say a lot, like software as an art. I think we're gonna see this kind of explode with all of these vibe coding tools and start to see software more as a medium to create and express instead of just a means to an end as it's been for
Hmm.
so long. And so that was kind of part of the reason I wanted to really double tap on that and dive headfirst and get obsessed with what software as an art could look like. And so that was part of the reason I ended up leaving Pixar after 3 years to decide to found something. And so, yeah, I founded Figment, and we have been working for about over a year now. So we met Ahmed through the A16Z Speedrun Accelerator at the very beginning of our journey. And yeah, now we've been working for a year and we are really digging into creative pipelines and how we can make hyper specific, almost like analog feeling creative pipelines,
Hmm.
looks that we don't normally see or people don't normally have access to.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I have a lot of questions. I guess my first thing is I want to go back to Pixar, and then I actually have a lot of questions around Figment as well, because it's been a while since I haven't, heard any updates from you. So I'm also like very interested to see where you're at. But I guess on the Pixar side, so Pixar, I got to visit once the campus, and I think it was the most beautiful campus that I've ever seen. And I always wondered, like working there feels like, movie magic. It's like magic all day working there. And, I think the campus also shows it. I guess, like, to the people who are, curious, what does your day to day look like when when you're a technical director at Pixar?
Yeah. So in Pixar, like there are a lot of technical directors, but to
Yeah.
people on the outside, it's unclear what a technical director is or
Yeah.
means. How I would describe it is technical directors are engineers that are assigned to specific films. So Pixar
Okay.
has software engineers that live on tools and research teams that kind of work across all films, but technical directors are people who they're not necessarily, I guess, like fully engineers. They're somewhere between this spectrum of fully art
Mm,
fully engineering, and they are people who are assigned to specific films to kind of work with art and technology hand in hand and bring the film to life. So when I was working on Turning Red, I was a rendering technical director. Rendering is the process of creating the final frames for a film, and
yeah.
or even in between processes creating the frames, but my specific role was focused on the final frames and
Okay.
getting them to be pristine and perfect. And I think this is a kind of stereotype of Pixar where they're extremely obsessed with detail and perfection, and my job was to bring the shots to complete perfection. So
Oh,
day to day
wow.
it was like finding rendering artifacts on specific shots and then fixing
Okay.
those and then getting them put into the film. So I
Oh,
got
wow.
really good at just watching shots on repeat and finding mistakes in them and
What
then
kind of mistakes? Like, I'm actually curious. Like, can you give us like an example of a mistake that,
yeah.
I'm actually super curious.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the simplest ones that would happen all the time is rendering is a process of simulating how light bounces around and into a
Sure.
camera. So once in a while, you would have a random pixel that's like white, that's blown out when it shouldn't be. And normally that would come from something like the light has bounced around and accidentally hit the sun or some crazy bright
Oh,
light source.
wow.
So we'd find these kind of blown out white pixels a lot of times. Other examples, you would have like rendering artifacts where things intersect, where, the collisions don't happen properly. So on YouTube, there are like a lot of videos where people have found mistakes in animated films. Definitely like we
Oh
don't
my
get to
God.
all of them, but there was a threshold of like, will people notice this? And the
Yeah.
threshold is like, will it take people out of the film? And like,
Sure.
will they not be able to focus because this is too distracting?
So you
So
had to fix like literally pixels, like single pixels, like
mhm,
one out of I don't know how many there are, like, but like, we're looking thousands, if not of tens of thousands, right? And it's like you have to fix like one pixel.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. Oh my God. Okay.
They would be very like clear though. They'd be like
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
white in like a dark room type pixels, so it was like clearly broken. So that was the very first job I had, a very first film. But as I progressed and worked on different
Hmm.
films, being a sequence lead was really cool, where I got to see sequences, which is kind of like you can say like a scene in a film. It happens in one location or
Yeah.
one major event happens. So I was assigned these sequences to shepherd from the very start of the film where it's all just like characters T-posing and like blocked around. That's
Yeah.
layout portion of the animation pipeline. And I would oversee it through the entire pipeline all the way till the final render. And my day to day there was I would show my sequences in reviews. COVID, it was on Zoom, but in person, it was I was in a theater and I was showing my
Oh
sequences,
wow.
kind of guiding conversations between different departments. So it would be like a conversation of, oh, this looks kind of broken or that needs to change. Who's going to
Yep.
take care of that? And what sequence of departments needs to work on this? Because the whole creative process is very like nonlinear and iterative. And it was a whole job to kind of coordinate how things are going to happen. So I was kind of like that grease on the wheel for production as well
Yeah.
as anything that didn't fall into any other department, I would take care of.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the overlay of my time when I was there.
Did it
Yeah.
require like coding? Were you like writing code for any of this?
Yeah, I think on occasion
Yeah.
I would write code. A lot of times it was like digging into code and finding kind of problems. A lot of our code was actually abstracted away too
Hmm.
in these tools that we would use, both like internal and tools that Pixar would buy. And so it was like searching through code. A lot of the code that I
Hmm.
worked on was also related to kind of pipeline automations. So it was less about, fixing this render. It was more about like, oh, how do you get thousands of things to render efficiently, and like
Yeah.
kind of scripts and like mini tools can we write
Hmm.
to automate this process. So that was kind of like some of the code work I did, mostly like scripts and automations, as well as like when things went wrong, like digging into tools and then
Yeah.
really understanding like how does this thing work, like what might be going wrong, and yeah, digging into that. A lot of it was working in the more like higher layers of abstraction, where I'm not looking at code, I'm looking at like a node-based tool
Okay.
to figure
Yeah.
out like what connects to what to get what I want. So that was quite a bit of the kind of day-to-day computer work as well. So it was that mixed with a ton of meetings, like these reviews that I was talking about, yeah.
Got it. And so a question I like to ask to people who have worked on stuff that have high, like, high expectation, let's put it that way. Like you think about like, had a guest from Fortnite and now you're from Pixar. And last time I had a coffee with someone from Naughty Dog, I guess a question I have is when you know the level of expectations that people have from Pixar movies and you're like working there, and especially for you, like you're actually fixing mistakes and doing stuff that people will see, do you feel a little bit of pressure or do you sense a certain sense of pressure? You're like, oh wow, my work like is gonna actually be seen by tens of millions of people. Do you think about that or not so much?
I think because I was kind of like one small piece,
Hmm.
gigantic movie making machine, I was more in awe of just like how this beautiful piece of artwork gets made,
Yeah.
how much detail and how much skill comes from so many people to make
Yeah.
this singular thing. And so I think there was always this hope and this feeling that I would be able to be a part of something that gives people that feeling of movie magic,
Sure.
feeling of being enveloped in a world and escaping to another world through story. Like I think I had a lot of hope that
Hmm.
what I created would give someone that feeling, but less than pressure, the feeling was really
Sure.
awe, especially seeing like this start from drawing and character designs, and
Yeah.
then be brought into this final beautiful result. One of my favorite
Yeah.
things was we would get to watch the scoring of the film. Like they would stream, the orchestra was scoring the
Oh
film,
wow.
and it's just like seeing everyone's interpretation and all of these different modalities of creation kind of like crescendo together to
Hmm.
create this beautiful thing. I was just so in awe. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was reading the book last time. I think a book that is now very famous, Creativity Inc. from I think Ed Catmull. Incredible book.
Mhm.
And actually, one of the things they talk about a lot is how much there is like iteration at Pixar. Like there's a
Mhm.
bunch of iteration. Like there's always reviews of every movie, etc. Multiple times. I don't know how many times. I guess first of all, like, what does that look like? And second, I'm curious. Like, did they ever have a movie that it was almost completed, and then towards the end, someone or some meeting was like, "Nope, this is not gonna go out." Like, did it actually ever happen?
It happened. It's happened before.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
surprised by like it is 100% a happening.
Hmm.
Um, it happened when I was there. To your
How's the feeling like when that happens? Like, what does like you've worked on something? Maybe not you, but like in general, like some people spend maybe years, months working on something, and then it's suddenly like shut down. Like, is there like a morale? Does it hit the morale, or are people okay with it because that's the culture?
I think definitely it is like a hit to morale
Mm,
when it feels like, this thing is like taking shape and taking
yeah.
form. I think to be able to create, you kind of have to like live in that world and fall in love with that world to be able to bring it to life. I'm talking about like not just me specifically, but like the
Yeah.
entire group of people working on it. There's just so
Yeah.
much towards bringing that world to life. But also, I have like some sense of respect for being able to go that far and
Hmm.
being able to call it if it's not it,
Yeah.
rather than just, oh, let's finish it
We've
because.
put a lot of work
Um,
into it. Like the sunk cost fallacy, basically. We've put work, so we need to finish it.
Yeah, yeah. I think if like art is is really interesting because it's not like a scientific problem that you can logically solve. And I think if the call has to be made that this is not working, like it has to be made. And so I remember like there's that story of like when Steve Jobs was creating
Hmm.
the the phone, and he learned really late in the process about touchscreen technology, and
Yeah.
they like poured a ton of money into creating this
Yeah.
prototype of a phone, and he was like, nope, we're starting over because this thing is going to
Yeah.
be like revolutionary technology and we need to
Yeah.
incorporate it. I think like always having a willingness to like change your mind as long as it is like for a good reason, I think I respect that.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, so
It's funny that, it comes from Steve Jobs, the example you gave on Apple, but also Steve Jobs was, some consider co-founder, some consider like late, but he was one of the leaders of Pixar. And like, I don't know, maybe it comes from there. Like, actually, like there is a high chance that it does.
mhm. Yeah, it's like, yes, we've invested a lot, but there's
Yeah.
there's so much more that goes into marketing a movie, like,
Yeah.
I think, like, half the budget goes towards marketing, so
Yeah.
I think yeah, it was really painful whenever things did change last minute, but I think, like, I'm very interested in viewing the business side of it and also
Yeah.
just the leadership side of it of how did you make that really difficult decision and uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it must be very, very hard. And there's probably some level also of like stress, like whenever these meetings are about to happen, you're like, oh, what if all my work is gonna go away? Like, but I respect, I respect that. And this is why one of the reasons why Pixar almost every movie is incredible, right? I think I love almost all of them. My favorite is called Soul, which I can spend like hours just talking about. I will not go in there. You don't want me to go in there. But no, I see like through the culture how they can maintain a certain level of quality. And actually talking about that, so I remember last year you shared with me like a very fun fact that I think is worth talking about. You mentioned to me, I think if I remember, that every Pixar movie starts with a question.
Hmm. I think I remember like the context of the conversation where it was like a lot of early Pixar movies
Yes, early
are
Pixar.
questions that like children have, right? What if
Okay, yeah,
came alive? What if
yeah.
there's a monster in my closet?
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, sorry. So, could you do you have like examples? Like you mentioned the closet. That's for Monsters Inc., right?
Monsters Inc. What if my toys came alive? That's
Toy
a
Story.
story, right? Yeah, I gotta think of other other examples, but I think I love that a lot of them are rooted in like very universal
Mm,
like questions that children have. I think I
yeah.
was like, are there aliens out there? Children, but even like existential questions, I guess adults have, right?
Right.
With
Yeah.
that.
I mean, Soul is like very adult. Like you
Mhm.
watch it and you're like, wow, a kid can like it. But watched it last year. I was like 26 and I just hit me so deep, right? And like finding that balance, it's just like, it's genius. I found it to be genius. Like no other studio in the world can do it.
100%. I think it's definitely like the Pixar signature to be able to balance existential feelings with like the comfort of,
Yeah.
children and humor. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess maybe last question on Pixar and then, move on and talk about other things. Do you have any insider fun fact? Something that you think fans would really, I don't know, people don't know from the outside, and then when hearing it, they're like get really excited about or like find it funny, something that is
Yeah.
like a fun fact.
Yeah, I think this was maybe briefly covered in Creativity Inc. And I remember reading an article about
Yeah.
it, but the inside of the Pixar campus is like Disneyland. You take like a bunch of the
Okay.
most cool people in the world and put them together, and of course they're going to make something cool. So I think early on in the story of Pixar, I think they talk about this in Creativity Inc.,
Hmm.
where they figured out that sheds are the same cost and size as a cubicle. So instead
Okay.
of ordering a bunch of cubicles, they got a bunch of sheds and they took off just the top to abide by fire safety rules. And Pixar, being Pixar, each of these incredibly creative people kind of turned their sheds into little houses or like little
Yeah.
taco stands. There's like a yeah, there's a lot of really cool themed offices in Pixar, and I think like yeah, to the level of almost like a Disneyland set,
Hmm. I
people
saw
have
that.
gone crazy to do things, and there was also a really funny article about how the best bars in Emeryville are actually at Pixar. Emeryville is where Pixar is located, has a
Yeah.
bunch of really great bars, but the best bars are inside Pixar's campus, and they're all, of course, super themed,
Ah,
dressed up like Disneyland sets. So yeah, I think I just like really loved seeing
mhm.
creative people shape their space and like
Yeah.
make it their own. So yeah, I think that would be my insider fact. It's just a really cool campus to visit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember when visiting it, I saw there was some Oscars. I don't know if they were real trophies or like replicas, but they
Hmm.
were like they were like Oscars. And I remember the kitchen was in the theme of Ratatouille. You had a part that was just for Soul. There were some characters from The Incredibles, like sitting there in the lobbies. Yeah, it was like I don't know, like it was like a dream come true for any fan. And I was, I was again like I was 26 and I felt like I was back to being 10 years old. Like I was just running around taking many pictures. Like if I look back on my phone, I think there's a huge like I took like maybe tens of pictures of that campus. Sometimes many of the same. It's just I couldn't. Yeah, I just I couldn't stop. But yeah, I understand why the fun fact would be around the campus because it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
I guess maybe my the next thing I want to talk about is so you've left Pixar, which must have been a hard decision. I have to guess. So I admire the people who go after their dreams. I always say that again and again, and I respect you a lot for dropping something comfortable and nice and a dream job for a lot of people to go pursue what you want. I think you touched on it early at the intro, but I'd love to learn more. Like what was it like you talked about seeing the sausage being made and wanting to like build a company around that. Like would love to learn, like was there a moment or realization you made like that happened, something that happened that made you want to start something new?
Yeah. Great question. I think there were a lot of layered reasons why
Yeah.
I left Pixar, but the main thing was I felt like I was losing more energy every day than I was gaining every
Hmm.
day. And I think that was for a number of reasons. I felt like as a person who loves creating, gets my life and my joy from creating things, I felt my joy for creation was not being utilized at Pixar. Because my role wasn't inherently creative, I would describe myself as like a technical plumber. I was creating pipelines for creation to happen through. And it was always a question for me, having studied engineering and
Yeah.
having art, like how the two would intersect in my life. I think Pixar was an exercise in what if I stayed really close to the art and surrounded myself with art, but I worked on engineering, like I worked on the technical side of.
Mm. Hmm.
I even like started up a side hustle of doing photography to kind of
Okay.
augment my desire to create and my desire to make art. But all of that got me just feeling kind of exhausted end of the day because my job wasn't to be the one
Mm.
creative. So I think
Yeah.
that was like the biggest like reason for me, and
For
I
sure.
just wanted to create something with my own DNA. I wanted
Mm.
to create something of my own. The reason I'm so obsessed with world building and storytelling is how someone can kind of create, m a mirror or, like, project their inner world out into some physical, tangible story or space you can inhabit and live in for a bit, and I've always been curious, like, what is my world? What is Shubha
Mm.
world? And
I love
so
that question. It's not a
yeah,
question that people ask a lot. What is, my world?
yeah.
Very interesting.
I think that's what you get through creating and through expressing. You are
Yeah.
getting an understanding of, like, your inner world and who you are in this period of time that you're creating. And so that was kind of like the biggest thing for me. And I was just feeling not good by the time
Mhm.
I left. I was feeling, yeah, I just needed to feel like I could create again
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like uh I could just like obsess over something.
Yeah.
I think without that single-minded obsession, I had been
Yeah.
dividing my attention amongst like 3, 4 different things and trying to go deep in them. No, I want like one thing to just
Sure.
like
Yeah.
obsess over.
Yeah. I
So
think side hustles are great and they can make up for like something, like you said, with photography, but for you. But like if 8 hours a day are spent doing something that you don't, that you stop believing was the right thing for you, and then spending an hour a day just doing the side hustle that you really want, like at some point it's going to hit you and you will want to spend all that time, 8, 9, 10 hours, just like in the direction of what you want to do, basically.
yep, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I was doing. I was working for 8 hours, I'd come back, I'd edit photos for 8 hours, and yeah, it's so
Yeah.
exhausting.
So
Mhm.
you left, and then that's when I met you. You started Figment. Tell us more. What is it?
Yeah.
What is it for? The usual pitch, which I'm sure you had to do like millions of times now.
Millions of times, but not anytime recently, and, like, startups, we're always kind of finding our way and
Yeah.
changing how we're doing things. So, initially when we got started with Figment, we were actually really interested in kind of this next generation of storytelling slash, like, what new mediums could emerge from new technologies.
Hmm.
So I was really interested in what what interesting interactive fiction could come with kind of folding in AI into the
Yeah.
mix. And we were actually working on a lot of interactive fiction games initially with Pigment. The idea was you could kind of co-create these stories with like an AI and infinitely kind of just generate the story in the world as you're living it. So I still think that this is like a new medium that could only come from this technology. That's really fascinating. But after building in that space for a while, I realized that my interest was in like more so creative tools. My interest was more in like creative tools that allow you to inject like your very hyper specific voice into
Yeah.
your creations. And that's actually kind of like the opposite of working with AI, where AI kind of like averages out,
Mm,
it smooths out your
mm,
edges. So
yeah.
I kind of ended up going the opposite direction of like, how can we create creative tools that are almost like creating in an analog medium, but
Yeah.
digital? So as of late, we've been working on a lot of creative tools for video or generally
Okay.
like digital creation, but focusing on how can you bring an analog look and feel, help people tunnel into like very hyper specific pipelines, very hyper specific looks. So I want to see like the breadth of creation just like explode now that we
Mm,
have this to AI tooling for coding. I
yeah.
think we can create like creative pipelines that didn't exist before because they were either
Yeah.
too difficult to create or took too much time to create,
Yeah.
or like, artists themselves didn't have like the the software power to be able to create it themselves, but now like they do.
Yeah.
So right now we're very focused on creating lots of campy, quirky, hyper specific pipelines for storytelling.
So you're back to pipelines.
Yep, back to pipeline. But I do think that is my art. Like my dream is to be able to create a pipeline and see a whole genre of video emerge from that.
Yeah.
Similar to what Pixar did with graphics, right? They literally forged an entire genre of 3D
Yeah.
animation through creating a pipeline. So I would like to do that times infinity. Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm curious. So, okay. So when you say someone puts their voice inside their own creation, I think that's very, very interesting. But practically, how does that happen? And we don't need to go into details, but like, if you're building basically a creative tool powered by AI, but then AI averages everyone and you don't want that. So how, like, what do you like, how do you make sure that someone's voice gets into their creation? Like, do you fine tune models? Do you like allow people to like ingest a bunch of data to create their own models? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, we're actually like we've kind of stepped away from AI right now.
Okay. Oh,
I
okay.
I think that it would be interesting
I
to
see.
interweave AI with like v- very specific tools that
Sure.
allow people to author like very specific to their voice. So we're kind of focusing on those very specific tools right
I
now.
see. I see.
Think down the line, like it would be interesting to see how that could pair with AI, but like
Yeah.
very specific
Okay.
tools that allow people to author their voice. So what does that mean? For example, like your handwriting is a
Hmm.
very specific way to author a font, right? So what are all the like
Very interesting.
creative pipelines that unlock like your specific voice.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like for me personally, like I'm trying to find Shuba world. Like I have kind of been going through this process of creating so much to understand what is the grammar of my world. What are the colors I gravitate towards? What are the fonts I gravitate towards? What kind of layouts, like minimalism, maximalism, like what is Shuba world? And once I understand that grammar, I feel like I can create things that feel authentic to me. And so, yeah, it the things we're creating are like equivalent to, oh yeah, create a font with your handwriting. Uh,
Yeah.
but for
Okay.
generally storytelling, how can you put your unique fingerprint onto how you edit videos,
Mhm.
generate assets, like or like how you yeah, how you edit your videos. We're really focused on like storytelling and editing right now. But generally like creative pipelines, we want to figure out
Yeah.
how you inject your voice into them.
And what's your dream with this company? Like, is it that Shuba world, but then everybody has, I get Ahmed's world, you get Shuba's world, everybody gets their own world in some shape or form? Is that the dream?
Yeah, that's a dream. The dream is like to give people the tools to find their own like voice and be able to express that authentically. I would
Can
love
we
to.
try your tool today? Like, is it available?
Well, we're working on a bunch of different tools. We were working on a video editor for a while,
Okay. Yeah.
on yeah, on the web, but we actually recently pivoted out and now we're working on a bunch of like mobile and iPad apps that have very
Okay.
specific pipelines. So I don't have it for you right now because it's not
Soon.
on the computer. But yeah, I think they are soon to be released. We're just like trying to get everything approved and
Yeah.
on the App Store. And our plan is just to create a lot of these like hyper specific pipeline
Yeah.
tools and kind of release like I'm building like a couple apps every week type of
That makes
thing.
sense.
And yeah.
Yeah. I find this super fascinating. Like, because what you're taking is basically hyper personalization. For you, it's like towards world building. I guess, like last time I was talking about this in another episode where I was talking about language learning because the person was like building a language learning app. And I was talking about Duolingo and I was saying, oh, like, using Duolingo today, all examples are the same. But if I love tennis, like suddenly it would be much easier for me to learn a new language if you can make it about tennis. And so hyper
Mhm.
personalization, I actually find it to be a very interesting topic. But it's the first time that I meet someone that's doing hyper personalization. Sorry, for like such a creative thing. Like usually it's like ads personalization or like I don't know, like stuff that is more like rational, right? Which has some like there's some business around it, which makes sense. But I find it very, very fascinating. Like we're like in a way hyper personalization for world building slash, for what you do. I find it fascinating.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think, like, I wrote a few things that is,
Yeah.
I feel like we're building these apps around, and one of it is personalize everything.
Yeah. There
Make
you
the
go.
digital feel more analog. Digital arts and crafts, I think is,
Yeah.
like, the feeling that we want. A digital playground for your creativity. So, yeah, hyper-personalization and just, like, the feeling of, like, sitting with your friends, you're all making something with
Yeah.
your hands. I want that feeling, but in the tools that we make, yeah.
That's awesome. I have two more questions for you. One is, you're a storyteller and a world builder. I think you're one of the most one of the people that I know that is most like, at the in the direction of, world building and storytelling. What's one belief you have about world building or storytelling in general that you will carry with you for the rest of your career? Something you learned at Pixar or sometime in your life? A belief.
Mhm. So, one of my favorite, like, things about stories and worlds is where a lot of the reality is not, like, explicitly said. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of it is kind of kept in your subconscious,
Sure.
um, and I but your conscious mind doesn't understand how things are connected or why things are connected, but your subconscious does perceive that there is some connection, some pattern. And that keeps you kind of like wanting to keep engaging in the story, engaging in the world to figure out what that pattern or connection is. I think that is like the coolest thing ever. I think that is why stories and worlds feel so rich.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there is some pattern. Your conscious mind is just not perceiving it. It's your
Okay.
subconscious mind is, and it's kind of like searching for that pattern. And I actually think like one of the most strong feelings that you can have when you watch a film that you love is there's this pattern that's been expressed and it's kept subconscious the whole
Yeah.
movie. And then by the end of the movie, it's revealed like what that pattern or that truth
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And being able to do that moment, execute on that moment really well, I think is
Yeah.
what makes a good story and makes for a good world. So I like talked to the creator of EVE Online, Hilmar,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about how they create this whole lore for the world,
Yeah.
and then they distill it down to little artifacts, like how things are named or why certain people don't like each other, and then they remove the lore. So there is some, like, pattern there, but you don't get access to it. You just are given all the, like, bits and pieces that point to the pattern, and I think that's what makes for a really intriguing world and an intriguing
Yeah.
story. Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Very philosophical.
Super cool. I think that works for
um,
your own personal worlds too. Sorry, last bit. Like,
yeah, actually,
when
yeah.
I'm trying to
What do
find
you
Shuba
mean?
World, when I'm trying to find
Yeah.
Shuba World, I'm like, how do I put together all these patterns that like show, don't tell, like who I am, right?
What's
So
an example for you?
I think very recently I have gotten very into like this app called Procreate, like painting
Okay.
on my iPad. And I gravitate towards all the paintbrushes that feel very much like messy and kind of like textured. And
Mm-hmm.
I that is a part of whatever I associate with, like something that
Yeah.
is like messy and textured and handmade. So I've been kind of like using that a lot in my paintings as well as like stuff I put out online. I noticed when I like edit my photos, I kind of developed a style over time, and that wasn't something I intentionally did. It's just something that happened, and that was
Yeah.
very interesting to me for like, oh, this is a part of Shuba world. Whatever pattern style that has developed here is like it's some expression of Shuba world, yeah.
I don't know why. I just love when I hear Shuba World. It also like it just goes perfectly. Their name, like the fact it just goes perfectly. That makes sense. And I guess my last question, a lot of people who are listening or viewing this are interested, I guess, into in some shape or form of on the career of like, that you have. Like, I guess, like, what I was saying earlier, like a lot of people dream of working at Pixar and start a company, and like I think, like, you've done a lot of things that people would dream about. And I guess, like, if you were, talking to your younger self, or if you had, like, teenagers in front of you, or like people who are just starting college and they want to get into this world, they want to work at companies like, Pixar, Naughty Dog, PlayStation, and start their own company later, you know what advice would you give them, especially with all the tools they have today? Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I think biggest thing is like follow your gut.
Hmm.
And I think I had this big question when I was younger about choosing a path and all of the other paths that kind of get closed off once you choose a path. And I will say that like I was kind of worried about that a lot. I was like, do I work in ed tech? Do I
Mm,
go down this arts and graphics path? Am I ever going to figure out a way to be an artist going down this path?
yeah.
Um, I think like what I would say is like stick with something that aligns with your gut intuition and it'll make sense down the line. Don't worry too much about like all of the things that you're giving up because there's so much to gain by just
Right.
like going deep on something. So I think like I still like think a lot about, oh, what are all the like millions of other
Yeah.
things I could be doing? But choosing to go down this path of like, I want to figure out how I can make a career that is my own and has my
Mm.
DNA where I can create. Like, that is just what my gut is telling me.
Sugar
Uh,
World.
yeah, like pursue
Yeah.
Shuba World. And like, yes, there are a million other opportunities and things to be
Yes.
doing,
Yeah.
but like my gut is telling me like do this thing and like
Yeah.
figure this thing out. And even
Yeah.
if it doesn't work over and over and over,
Yeah.
like keep doing this thing because otherwise I'm always gonna have that question in my mind of like
Yeah. And it's
what
hard in today's world, especially when you're on LinkedIn, when you're on social media, what other people are doing, and everybody is like on LinkedIn. Like, for example, in company building, it always seems like the other companies are like doing better than you because they,
oh
what Instagram they do in like social life, like LinkedIn they do for example, for founders. And so you can be like, oh, what if I pivot my company and do that? And in the case of careers, it's, oh, but that friend I had in college, he's in this career and he seems to be having so much fun. Why am I not doing that? And then you start having people that just jump left and right. But yeah, no, I think that's very, very valid. And I think way more people are thinking about this and like suffering a little bit from like, this question of like, oh, there's a million things I want to do, then, and people don't necessarily talk about just because it's hard to talk about. But I think that's a very, very useful and valid advice. Something that I really, really value. So
yeah.
thanks for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Shubha. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was awesome hearing everything, all of your story, and thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks, Ahmed.